welcome back to the channel, and this video is another 5 tips to help you get the best from your Harris's hawk and other hawks you might fly.
Nige.
So tip number 1, and actually I don't think it's a tip that I've included in any of my previous sort of top tips hawk videos, even on Raptor Exotics Falconry, the old channel. And number 1 of today's tips, I think, is aggression, because don't trust any animals. I work with snakes, I work with dogs, I work with birds of prey, I work with eagles up to that sort of size. Don't trust animals 100%, especially non-domestic animals. So birds of prey, remember, they're all captive bred here in the UK, but they're essentially, psychologically, they're wild animals that were born and bred in captivity. Of course, they've never been in the wild, they're not from the wild, but they've not been bred in sufficient generations to become a domestic animal, maybe like a dog or a cat. And reading their body language is a huge part of animal husbandry and animal training, whatever it is. Dogs have been around humans for thousands of years, and they can read our body language, and we can read theirs. Any sort of reasonable dog owner can read their dog's body language easily. So I can tell if a dog's playing, I can tell if a dog's going to be aggressive, and so on and so forth, and so on. Birds of prey, a lot of people start with a Harris hawk, they're told it's an easy beginner's bird to keep, blah blah blah, but it's an animal that feels fear, it feels maybe hunger, it feels anxiety, and it also can feel empowered and dominant. So when you're working with Harris's hawks, for sure, as the case with a lot of birds of prey, and certainly eagles, the females can have the more aggression, the more aggressive tendencies, and there's 2 reasons. There's 2 parts of their lives where aggression in Harris hawks is especially likely to occur, and more so in females. So number 1, you've got a young Harris hawk you're training. Now, it's a social bird, remember, so in the wild it's kind of put in its place. Now, you can't be physical with birds of prey. If you want to hit and smack your Harris's hawk, you're never ever going to get very far with that bird, and it will never be a nice, pleasant bird to work with. They don't understand that, but within their own kind and their ranks, they talk to each other verbally, and they talk to each other physically. And a young hawk, if it's working in this family pack, is in part of the pecking order. And for sure, just like in most animals and humans, if you're bold and aggressive, you can end up sometimes being the bully, and that can, of course, in the wild, get you places. It can make sure you get more food than anyone else, and that could well lead to your survival. So bullying, unfortunately, is a big part of behaviour in social animals. Now, if you've got a very confident young hawk, or just a young Harris's hawk that you've completely misjudged its feeding requirements, and its hunger and its prey drive and its desire to eat, its appetite, call it what you will, then you can easily end up with a hawk that wants to attack you. Birds of prey in the wild, generalizing, they are driven away from home by not being fed by their parents more than anything else. The parents will stop feeding them, and they're going to have to start looking for their own food. And before they start being successful, they can get incredibly hungry. And then when they do see their parents carrying food for themselves, birds of prey, very likely to attack and try and mug and rob their own parents. They are now starving hungry, and up till this point, the food's been dished out to them, and they don't understand why their parents are now over there somewhere eating and not offering them the food. And they can be incredibly aggressive towards their parents. In fact, if you breed birds of prey, many species, the breeders want those young gone at a certain age, because at a certain point in time, the parents will stop feeding them, and naturally, it's just a natural sort of switch inside them. The young fledgling, now fully feathered birds really, will often attack and bully their own parents within the confines of a breeding aviary, because the parents can't really get away. That, with the Harris's hawk being such a sociable species that'll sort of bond with humans very well indeed, that aggression can turn onto you with a young hawk. And it's something to watch out for. Female Harris hawks especially, when they hit 3 or 4 years of age, they really get into their hormones really kick in, and it's time for them to breed. Really, they're really mature by 3 or 4 years, and a female Harris's hawk can also be very aggressive around that time. Often, if it's in a forever home, often not with the falconer. But if you fly your female Harris's hawk as a one-man or one-woman bird, as that bird matures and hits real breeding hormones kick in, that bird can fly across the field and attack other people. Now, it's not trying to eat them, it's not trying to kill them, it's trying to drive them away. They are part of another pack. And something, again, I see all the time on social media, and people ask us all the time, Harris hawks are social birds, they can fly in a group. And people genuinely think, well, you can just let your Harris hawks go with another Harris hawk and they'll all be happy and they'll work together. And then you get the phone calls I get. Oh, Dave, have you ever had a Harris hawk kill someone else's Harris hawk? No, I haven't, because I like to fly my Harris hawks on their own, or in a cast, my husband and wife team, if you like. Pack animals do not like other packs of the same animal in their territory. They drive them away. They fight with them. Most pack animals do that. Harris hawks don't all get on. They need socialising first. They need to accept each other. A young female Harris hawk, very capable of killing someone else's male Harris hawk of any age. This is what can happen if you get it wrong with your lovely, beginners, easy to train Harris hawk. So at Icarus Falconry, we've got Pandora here. She's trained and flown by the girls here, the team, the falconers here. And today I'm just feeding the birds, and she's only ever fed inside her aviary. So she's free lofted. She's only ever fed inside her free loft by me, because I have 1 day a week where it's all about maintenance, gardening and feeding the birds. And 1 day a week, none of our birds get any exercise. That's their chill out day. So that bird knows that when I go in there, I'm hiding it, but I'm going to pop some food onto her shelf perch for her to eat on her own. Feeding birds of prey on the weathering lawn, in their aviaries, in their mews, in your garden, leads to massive problems. Birds of prey can get incredibly aggressive if they're being fed where they actually spend a lot of their time, their territory, if you like. They can get very aggressive to the falconer. I can read birds really well. I can read birds of prey well, for sure. Rushing around. I could hear her cheeping as I opened the door. I knew she was getting excited because the food was coming in. The food's hidden in my pocket. She can't see it, but she knows if I go in there, I'm probably bringing food because no one else does. I don't let the staff feed her in there. It's not a good idea. They know different people. So I've gone in. She's behind the door. I know what perch she's on. And I never look at a bird as I go in an aviary, because by the time you've looked at it, if it's on the attack mode, it's going to smack you straight in the face and it's going to hit you in the eyes. You've only got 2. They don't grow back. So I go in, I'm shielding my head, I'm walking to the ledge where I'm going to put the food, so she can only get the back of me, and she still flew at my head and managed to get the side of my face here. Now that is swelling up because those talons went into the bone. That's not some kind of bravado, is it? You've got hardly anything on your face, have you? You've got a bit of skin, a tiny bit of flesh, and then it's bone. The talons are this long. They go into the bone and they hit the bone. It goes a bit numb. You probably hit a nerve there. Stupid mistake. That's not something to be proud of if you keep birds of prey and you can read their body language. I kind of knew it was probably going to come sooner or later, hence the way I approach her inside her aviary. The sensible thing to do would be to put the glove in through the door. She'd land on the glove, secure the jesses, pop the food on the shelf perch, let her fly off. I'm busy. I'm feeding all of these guys, and I don't do it properly. On the 1 day a week I come and feed them, I just pop the food in as quick as I can. It doesn't have a great negative for me because I'm not the one that trains and flies most of these birds anymore, for sure. Be aware of aggression. That in your eye is a whole different ball game. If you've got your Harris hawk tethered, then you can pick it up. You can make sure it cannot foot you at all if you go about it sensibly. The leash enables you to pick up your Harris's hawk And you should be able to do that, whatever kind of Harris hawk, without ever getting footed on the bare hand. That's where it's going to go for. It can't reach your face. But there is one other critical time when a Harris hawk of any age can bounce up and go and get you in the face. It's always going to be your face. If you're scared and you want to scare an animal away, you're going to hit it in the face. It's just natural. Animals know where your eyes are. They know which bit to go for to push you away. Often aggression is born out of nervousness. It's an offensive way of being defensive, really. But birds of prey in their own enclosures, orientated around food, goodness gracious, you've always got to have your wits about you. There is one other place it can go wrong, and I'll show you where it can go wrong. If a bird's got any chance of bouncing up and getting you in the face, even when it's on its leash, it's when it's here on the weighing scales. Because here, the bird's on here, that bird can bounce off of here up into your face, because people get complacent. They let the bird sit on there. They might have the leash attached to their glove. It's got a couple of foot, maybe longer, that it can bounce up while you're staring at the scales. Never, ever. Doesn't matter how sweet you think your Harris's hawk or bird of prey is, never leave it bouncing around on there. Have hold of the leash shorter. If anything happens, it can't get away from the glove end of you to this end of you, for sure. Read the body language. Read the body language, because a bird sitting on those scales there, like most hawks sitting still, even on the perch in the mews, if it's thinking of striking and attacking for whatever reasons you don't even know, can't perceive, will never maybe understand, it'll put its head down more than likely. The back of its crest, if it's a Harris hawk, red-tailed goshawk, the back of its crest will probably lift up slightly. Its head will look flatter. It'll put its head down, downwards, and it'll look up at you under its eyebrows. That's a real sign that bird is thinking about bouncing off at your face. Read their body language, learn their body language. Don't rush around. Don't rush around, creating bad habits and literally ignoring what you know is probably going to happen. Always with animals, treat them in the worst case scenario. If I do this, what would happen if that hawk decides it's going to have a go at me? How am I restraining it? Know your birds. They change over time. Think about it. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to go and wash your face off with a wet wipe and it's going to sting. Enjoy the rest of the video. Tip number 2, for sure, with Harris's hawks especially, if those birds get damp and wet whilst out and about in the winter, hunting and flying, dry them off before you put them away for the night. They are so prone to wingtip oedema. They don't just have to be soaking wet, they can be damp, they can just get a knock on the wing. Maybe it's windy and they're a young hawk and they've just sort of whacked their wing gently or a little bit on a tree as they've landed in the wind. You're not going to notice. You're not going to notice at all. Bit of swelling, a bit of fluid on that joint that they banged on a tree branch, and freezing cold conditions. That also leads to wingtip oedema. Basically, it's frostbite of the wingtip. Prevention is better than cure, and I'll tell you why. If they get wingtip oedema, 95% chance that bird's going to be finished. Its flying career is going to be finished. It can sit around for the rest of its life in an aviary with one usable wing. But to be honest, for most of them that get wingtip oedema, it's a horrible thing to get, because not only does it mean their primary feathers, their main flying feathers on that wing, will constantly fall out. The sad thing is they'll regrow, but there's not enough living flesh left on the wingtip to support those feathers. They'll regrow, they'll fall out while they're still in the blood, it'll be a bit bloody, and they'll regrow again. It's just a cycle of pretty rubbish, really. Dry your Harris's hawks off before putting them away in cold winter weather, for sure. If you can't be bothered to find a hairdryer that hasn't got Teflon in, some hairdryers have Teflon coated elements. If it overheats, just like a Teflon frying pan, those fumes kill birds outright. So just be careful what hairdryer you use. You do not want Teflon coated elements at all. If nothing else, pop them in their travel box in the warmth of your house for a while they preen and dry off in there. Don't put your Harris hawks away wet. Sooner or later, you'll probably finish its career. Be ultra careful. Good boy, Nige. Now, there's times, very, very occasionally, where you might need to remove your hawk's feet and talons from something. Hopefully not your face. To give you a sort of an example to the extreme, once upon a time when Elsie, my German short-haired pointer, was young, she was working near the side of a tree-lined hedgerow and she flushed a rabbit. Being a naughty girl, she didn't stop on the whistle at that time, and she ran and chased the rabbit and she pegged the rabbit down. Zeus was on his way. Zeus was on his way, and he, as he flew over the tree-lined hedgerow, Nigel. There's nothing there, and Nigel's pretty clever. The eagle's up high, at treetop height. He saw the rabbit below, folded up his wings and stooped down, hitting the rabbit hard. The only thing was, he didn't hit the rabbit hard because the pointer had now got a rabbit in her mouth. The eagle got hold of the dog. So the eagle stooped down, got hold of the dog around her face with both feet, all of his talons, sort of hedging his bets, I suppose, to make sure he got at least some of the rabbit. Now, that eagle's locked on. Its talons are locked onto the dog's face and head, and it pretty much sure it's got its dinner. It's not going to let go, is it? So what do? You've got a golden eagle. Your dog's probably not very happy about the whole situation, and you really don't want the eagle to actually eat your dog. So what do? Well, you could get a little bit of food out your food pouch or your food pocket and throw the food to one side, and the eagle will more than likely, because it's been traded off lures and kills obviously in the past, jump off eventually, release the dog to go and get the food. In which case then you can call the eagle back onto your glove, away from the dog. But what are you doing? So think about your steps there. You're throwing food to one side to lure the bird away from the thing it's got hold of that you do not want it to have hold of. Basically, you're training the bird to grab hold of whatever that thing is, aren't you? You're giving it a food reward for grabbing the thing you don't want it to grab. Occasionally, maybe only once in your falconry career, you are going to need to get your bird off of something ultra fast. Not by offering it a tidbit, not by waiting. You've got to remove that bird. The way birds of prey tendons run down their legs, over their bones and into their toes and talons to produce that fantastically powerful grip is a kind of locking mechanism, not unlike an old-fashioned handbrake that you pull up. It's on a ratchet, click, 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 click on your car, and then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to keep pulling to stop it rolling away. It's locked into place. You actually have to press a little button, don't you, to release the mechanism and allow that handbrake cable to relax. The way the birds of prey's tendons and toes and talons and bones work together is a ratchet system, exactly, or very much like that. And just like that, you can physically release it. The birds can release it, you can release it. When a bird of prey is tightening its grip as hard as it can, I don't know if I can do this, it doesn't stand there with its legs outstretched. Its legs bend back and down like this. Like this. It's tighter. If you were to force that leg straight, automatically, without any choice, those tendons have to relax and open, because a bird of prey ratchets up its tendons by doing this. That's where it's got its mega grip. When you see a bird of prey killing its prey, or holding its prey, trying to kill it before the falconer runs in to help, it's down on its haunches like this, on its hocks, or whatever they're called actually, and it's like this, gripping up, down. If it was to stand on its prey, straight-legged, doing its best gripping, it wouldn't be able to grip very tightly at all. So by straightening the leg, you can physically release those tendons. I'll show you where and how on Nigel. Now, I've seen on social media people say, a golden eagle, you can straighten its legs with one hand. Ludicrous. Perfectly possible, especially in a situation where you might ever need to do it because your adrenaline, whatever that situation in emergency will be running. You can do it with one hand. I know that. I had to do it once for sure. I'll show you what I mean. Now, I'm sure Nigel's not going to be too pleased with this, but there's the bend in the leg. Now, it's what you might think of as the bird's sort of knee, but of course it's not. His knee's up here. This is really more or less our ankle. Here is where the bird's leg, sorry, Nige, pulls down like this as it grips its prey, and you're trying to straighten it. It's easy. You just, your hand and your thumb. He's not going to be happy. If you grab the joint here, push against, have a look at this. His leg is perfectly, thanks Nigel, his leg is perfectly straightenable here. And even with a golden eagle, it's possible. This is something that you probably never have to do, but maybe just that one time, you've got to get your bird off of something in an emergency. Grab the leg, straighten the leg, thanks Nigel, straighten the leg, here, and look at his foot here. It's completely relaxed. He's got no tight grip on that whatsoever. He has, however, got needle point talons. Typically for a bird that nowadays does displays, education and experience days, he doesn't need to have needle point talons. They're needle point. The Murphy's Law in falconry, if this guy here was a pure hunting Harris's hawk, he would dull his talons just by looking at them. It is ridiculous the way the Murphy's Law sort of revolves around any kind of animal keeping. Being able to straighten the birds of prey's legs and knowing how could get you out of an emergency situation. Now, something that's made a big meal of on social media is birds with overgrown beaks and the need to cope them. And if you don't know what cope means, it's to, if you cope the bird's beak or talons, it's to trim them. Yes, a bird's beak that's like gonzo, so curled round that it actually can't shut its mouth properly because the beak, obviously the upper mandible grows in a curve, and it can rest on, the end can rest on the lower mandible, meaning it can't even close its beak easily if overgrown. That's not good, is it? And an overgrown beak, the downsides are, it can lead to cracking of the beak because at the end of the day, it makes it a longer lever. Not so bad with Harris hawks, but certainly with the falcons, with their tominal tooth, that kind of strange shaped sides of their beak, that is a real weak point when it comes to cracking on overgrown beaks. So of course you need to keep the beaks down and coat to the sort of right size and shape, but for sure a little bit overgrown isn't going to cause you major issues when you get to attend to it. However, if you do allow the bird's beak to overgrow quite a degree regularly, what does happen is the blood inside the beak, just like the quick in your nail, the quick grows down into the longer beak. So you get to the point it's difficult to take that beak back to its original size and shape because you trim the beak and you cause it to bleed. If you do that and it drips just occasionally, don't worry about it too much. Give the bird soft food for a couple of days and it'll be fine. But obviously if you cut too deeply in and that beak is bleeding well, you've got to staunch the bleeding for sure. I use excuse me, no, it's not the C word. I hope he's not going to catch the germs. It's a common cold. I use a little pen that I got from the vet to staunch the bleeding just in case, but for sure 10 minutes 10-minute coffee fit later, I'm okay, just about. Oh, I hate a cold. So a slight overgrowth of the beak isn't going to kill your bird for sure. Don't let it get too long. It can cause problems, and of course a problem that means when you cut it the bird's beak might bleed. That's quite a big problem, isn't it? Simple tools you need: a little pair of wire cutters and a simple metal file, a small metal file. It's all you need to do the job. All you need for a simple job are some wire cutters. Hopefully you're going to keep them cleaner than my girls do here, and a simple metal file. Very basic, inexpensive tools that'll do all the work you need to do. If you want to use a Dremel, fine, just take your time until you get used to it. It's easy to take too much off that you can't. So this video isn't about how to cope your bird's beak. It's about the fact that you will need to master that skill, and you will need to cope your bird's beak at some point. You can't just let it grow and grow and grow and think it'll be okay. Of course you can feed your bird rabbit heads that you've stored in the freezer from previous hunting forays and give it them as a treat through the molt, or certainly once a week through the hunting season, because as it picks off all the meat, it's going to naturally wear away its beak. And of course that's the best way, isn't it, for it to naturally keep its beak in trim, as they would in the wild. But with the best will in the world, often during the molt actually, or when you get your bird taken up from the molt, and the hormones that make those feathers grow faster and new often encourage that beak to overgrow as well. So what you can do is get away with an intermediate trim. So normally you're going to take the point off the beak, and then with your wire cutters, and then you're going to use a file with your thumb in the bird's beak to keep the mandibles apart, to work the sides of the beak here back into shape, and to work a point back onto that beak as well, that upper mandible. So excess off with the wire cutters, filing back into shape with this. Intermediately, you can very often get away, if you've got a bit of patience, with just very carefully, not too much, just taking the end off at that kind of angle. So you're getting pretty much a point on there. And then that'll buy you maybe a few more weeks before you have to go in there and file it and do a full-on trim, just to keep that beak down at the end there. So you can wrap your hawk in a towel or a soft cloth, and some of it over its eyes so it's not too stressed. And while someone's holding that bird for you, you can get to work trimming and filing that beak. Or you can use a specially made casting jacket, which means it'll hold the bird wrapped up while you do the work on your own. Or, with a lot of patience and a nice relaxed hawk, you can, without the filing bit, just take that end bit off while the bird is sitting quietly on your glove. Maybe dim the lights down in the room, but of course everything becomes much easier for the falconer and much less stressful for the hawk if you've made your Harris hawk to the hood and you understand why and how the hood works. It means you can just nip that end bit off, snip, get back working that hawk. Maybe the next time around it's going to be growing down the sides here and need another nip off the end and a full-on filing. But realistically, I'll get you on the move, get you out of jail without a fuss, hood your hawk, wire cutters, just nip the end off. Don't go too much. Don't let your bird's beak overgrow. You are going to get slated everywhere you go. And of course, if your bird's beak is so long, it can't shut its mouth, its beak, that's not ideal for the hawk. I'll try and show you a picture of a goshawk I've got somewhere that was mine in the early days. With a ridiculously overgrown beak that needed trimming. Could have done it in 2 minutes flat. Why didn't I? Why don't you? Sometimes we let things go. Don't do that. Keep on top of everything, because most of the things that you put off take you 2 minutes. It's like the washing up. Oh, pop goes the weasel. From me and Nigel, thanks for watching. I've been sort of slightly off at a tangent some of these tips, but hopefully it'll all help keep you and your hawk in fine fettle, ready for all kinds of things. Like any animal keeping, keep these guys healthy and in good condition, because once they need to go to the vets, then they're on a very slippery slope indeed. Certainly birds, they hide illness until it's too late. keep everything clean, everything tidy, look after animals. Please click on subscribe. It is a massive help to us to keep this channel going. Like if you can. You know this channel by now isn't all about falconry. It's got 3 genres. Like and subscribe, and then you can keep an eye out for the next Harris's Hawk or falconry video. Thanks guys.